Welcome to Amazing Stories of Amazing Grace. I'm your host, Chester Stanley, and we're delighted to have in the studio Cveta Bakof. Welcome, Cveta.
Thank you, Chester.
Great to have you with us. And you're possibly aware that this series of programs is looking at journeys of faith. And we're very interested to hear about your journey today. And so I think it probably would be appropriate for me to ask you, tell us about your childhood. Where were you brought up and what were the circumstances surrounding your upbringing?
Well, Chester, I guess it does make sense for me to go a little bit of a background because of how God has led in our lives. That's my family, my mum and dad and my brother and my sisters. We're from Macedonia, former Yugoslavia. And we, I guess, grew up mainly just as communism took place in Macedonia, and the influence of the dictatorship type of government played a lot of havoc on our family anyway, because my mum and dad were very wealthy, and Dad was a trader, he was a merchant, had made a mark in the community, and then when communism came, he was very vocal for freedom. Okay. And of course, this didn't sit very well with the local government.
He would have been a marked man because of his vocalness, wouldn't he?
Absolutely. And because of that, he was constantly taken in for questioning. The KGB, my dear mum would say, we didn't know what it was like to live without them because they were at your doorstep all the time. And I guess, yes, this makes people turn to seek for power outside of themselves. My mum and dad, although my mum's side of the family has deep roots into the Orthodox Church. For centuries, her ancestors were of the priesthood of the Orthodox faith. Okay, right. My dad, not so much. My dad's father often would say that we were of Israel, and he didn't like the thought of saints and such faith. And often my sister remembers, I don't, but my sister remembers recalling when grandfather would say, Elijah is our prophet. These saints don't have anything. But he didn't make it very vocal. With communism, my mum and dad took a stand for their faith, and Dad was jailed for 3 months for christening me when I was born. For christening you? For christening me.
That's amazing.
And my grandmother and my mum did it secretly, but my young sister told on them with excitement. Why have they put the baby in a bag to take her to church? Yes. And of course the authorities caught on to that and jailed my father for 3 months. And my dad often, when he used to joke when we were in Australia later, it was your fault, Cveta. Communism came in Macedonia. You were born and they came. So he was very anti-communism. He felt that that really was not appropriate for people's lives and could not work.
What was the source of family income during that time?
Well, when Mum and Dad spoke against communism, everything was confiscated from them. They had nothing left. All their property, Dad and Mum had bought materials to build a new home. That was taken because the local government wanted to build the local city council free of charge, so they took all Dad's belongings. And not only that, but because Dad was trading in wheat, they took all the wheat that he had, so they had nothing. When Dad escaped, if Dad had not been sending us money from Australia, we wouldn't be alive. Because Mum was not allowed. Under communism, they had communal farming, and of course, all that land belonged to the government. People worked, and you got a portion of rations, really, of food. And Mum got rations for her, but not for her children. And then they broke that system. Mum was allowed to have some of her property back, but then she was not allowed to sell any of her produce. And it was very important that Dad provided for us because he sent money, and which was, we believe, God protection, because at least we were allowed to get his money. And when we went to the shops, in communism, they line up. to get something, and we would line up, and then when our turn came, say, no, you're an alien's child, you go back to the bottom of the line. Oh, so you can't purchase anything. So these are the sort of things that Mum was putting up for 8 years before we came to Australia. And in all that time, Chester, Mum would say, you must remember there is a God. Don't let atheism tell you there is no God. I remember I was in grade 2 or 3, I can't remember now, and it was Easter. But of course Easter is a very special time for the Orthodox Church. Yes, and we got dressed in our Sunday best. We went to school, and I remember I was only a very small child, but the teacher saying to me, Cveta, now why do you believe in such rubbish? There is no God. You prove to me where there is a God. And in my innocence, I said, will you prove to me there is no God?
Well done, Cveta.
My mum says there is a God, and I believe there's a God. Well, of course, for that, we suffered. We were allowed to have grades. We were aliens' children. We were also practicing Christians, so no grades. Instead of passing, you would be made to repeat. So eventually we came to Australia, and the freedom was so special, Chester. It was to be celebrated at every turn.
I think those of us that brought up in this sort of context don't really realise just how special freedom is.
You don't, Chester, because it was nothing for us back in Macedonia to be just having a meal, and KGB would knock on the door and would take Mum for questioning. We wouldn't know whether we would see her or whether we won't see her. There was just no certainty. So I guess that made you cling to a greater power. When we came out here, it was not roses. Yes, life was very tough in Australia. There was a language barrier. There was few things of this world's goods to have. When we came out here after 8 years, we lived in Camberwell. Yeah. And we liked Camberwell, but my dad's funds didn't allow us to live there. And then we were pushed to go and live over a butcher shop. Okay. We didn't like that.
Right, let's pause right there, Cveta. We'll go to a break, and you're going to really enjoy the rest of this fascinating story that Cveta will unfold to us. Welcome back, and we're letting Cveta unfold a very fascinating story. Cveta, you and your mum and your brothers and sisters have left Macedonia and come to join your father in Australia. That must have been quite an emotional, reunion.
It was a high, absolutely. Yes. My dad had a welcoming committee. There was about 20 people waiting for us,
relatives?
Which was relatives.
Yes.
My mum's cousin that she hadn't seen for 30 years because they were in the Greek part of Macedonia and the border was closed. So this was sort of a catch-up time. So it was a very happy time for us. We were really pleased to be in Australia, and the most significant thing that we really noticed here was when the bread man came in. He could leave bread at the door and nobody would take it, and it was such freedom, and we could leave the money and he would get paid. That was such a wonderful thing. Okay. Mum sensed the freedom of this beautiful country, and it was just a real peace for her. And we started to want to worship God in freedom. So we were looking, and again, as I mentioned before, the holy days in the Orthodox Church are very, very special. And we came in November, and in December we wanted to celebrate Christmas. And for the first time we had seen the streets decorated, and the whole nation is worshipping at Christmas time. That was real special, and it was a real blessing. We felt really, really blessed to have worship, because in former Yugoslavia, you went to church at Christmas and Easter, there was no priest.
So that was it. Yeah.
There was no priest. Here there was an actual service, and it was pleasing to us. And so my sister, Draga, is quite the academic. She really felt that when she came out here, she would go to school and she would study, and that wasn't possible. So that was a bit upsetting for her, and so she said, Lord, you've got to help here. I don't like the way we're living. We were expecting a better life,
Yes.
but we didn't have it. And I guess that makes you turn more to God. I don't know. But for us, it was. And it was about 2 or 3 years that we'd been going to church regularly, and we felt that we really want to worship God how He would like us to worship Him.
Did you know how He wanted?
No, let me finish.
Okay.
In the meantime, I was going to primary school, and I had started to go to Sunday school, a Methodist Sunday school, with 2 of my school friends. And Dad said yes, I could go to that. And I went to my first Sunday school, and the Sunday school teacher said, we will have a quiz. And he said, because I didn't know a lot of English, don't forget.
Yes.
And so to include me, he made a very simple quiz, and he said, Cveta, who is Jesus? And I said, I don't know. He said, he's the Son of God. So I thought, well, so what does that mean? I went home and I shared with Mum and Dad, who is Jesus? And he says he's the Son of God. What does that mean? Mum and Dad really didn't know, Chester. We knew Jesus, we knew God. What their role were, we had no idea. And it was Christian Endeavours, and the Sunday school gave me a little Bible, a little blue Bible, hardcover. And it was just like all the other children. And then they gave Mum and Dad a Bible in Yugoslav. And Dad thought that was so special. He took the Bible, wrapped it in a beautiful, clean, white linen cloth, and put it in his special case. And that was sacred. You don't touch it. And my sister said, what's that? And I said, this is a Bible. We'd gone to the Orthodox Church, and the priest opens the Bible and reads from it. And I said to Draga, that's similar to what we do at Sunday school. I was still in my very early years. I wasn't even a teenager yet, and the girls were in their teens. So a few years went past, and we then decided that, hey, let's compare the 2 Bibles. So Draga took her Bible, not her Bible, Dad's Bible from his case, and I took my English one, and we compared them.
And what did you say?
Well, they're word for word. How could 2 books be so the same? How can that be? Boy, this is a good translation. They're the word for word. And my dad caught us, and he said to Draga, what are you doing? And Draga says, we're just comparing the Bible. He said, how dare you touch that? That's sacred. You're a girl. Girls don't touch the Bible. And this went on.
So it was sort of like a sacred,
it was
holy
too sacred,
object.
too holy, and you should not be trifling with it. And Dad very sternly said to Draga, Draga, you don't play with God. This is His word. It is sacred. You don't touch it. And we said, but I've got it in English. He said, well, read that one. Don't touch this one. To him, because it was English, it didn't have the same significance, and so we could read it. Anyway, a couple more years went by, and it was Easter, and we decided that we were going to do the right thing. By the Orthodox Church, you have 6 weeks of Lent. And so we were going to go on Lent, and for that, you don't eat any meat, you don't eat any fat, any dairy products, you're a total vegan. And Mum said, you're going to be sick, you girls, for 6 weeks. That's too long without meat or without cheese or without all these things. You're going to be sick. And so she watched us, and we didn't know. But we were doing really very well. And then we took the sacrament. And we then thought that was really special. And we went to our Macedonian church, which is midnight mass. Then we went to the Greek church, very early Sunday morning, Easter Sunday morning. Then we went to the Russian church, and they were within walking distance.
So you were really looking around.
We were looking to see what the other churches did.
Okay, I think we'll leave it right there because we need to go to a break. So folks, we'll be right back to hear the rest of Cveta's story. Thanks a lot. Welcome back, and we're here with Cveta. Cveta, so you and your sisters do this search of a number of churches. Why did you do that?
Just out of curiosity.
Okay.
Draga had heard that the Russian church was much more pious than the Macedonian,
Right.
so we went to have a look.
Yes.
And we looked at the 3 churches in the one day. We came home and we had been tired because it was a high week, the whole week. And so we decided to have a short nap before we went to the next meeting on that Sunday, Easter Sunday. And as we were talking, and we just, between the 3 of us, kind of said, I wonder which one God wants us to go to.
So you
The Russians.
You actually talked about that.
Actually talked about
Yes,
it. The
sure.
Russians are pretty pious, and I said, but I don't understand Russian. And Draga was very good at languages, and she said, I'll teach you. If that's where God wants us to go, we'll go there. And for the first time in our life, we actually knelt down and prayed.
This is the 3 sisters
the 3
and
of
your
us.
mum? Or
No,
just the
Mum
3 sisters?
everyone had dispersed after lunch, everyone had dispersed, and it was the 3 of us. And we just kind of said, and we crossed ourselves like the Orthodox do, and we said, Lord, which is the church you want us to go to? Just tell us and we'll be happy to go there and worship. And so that was the end of it, and went to sleep. And then Draga woke both Luba and I, because we shared a room. And she said, wake up, I've got to tell you something. I had a dream. And we said, well, what is it? And she said, I saw Jesus from the waist up. And with a wave of his hand, he said, you 3 girls asked yourselves, which is my church? It's none of these. And she actually saw the churches in this dream. And Jesus said, none of these.
Amazing.
But you will find, and with the wave of his hand, she saw another scene. You will find these people, and that is my church.
Okay.
And there was a picture that she had seen in this dream. And she said, that was it, I woke up. I said, well, there are a lot of churches in Melbourne, we'll go looking. And for 2 years, we looked at every church building we that came across our path. Whether it was a Sabbath or whether it was a Sunday or whether it was a Monday, it didn't matter. We just went into it to look for this particular scene that Draga had in her dream.
Did she describe that scene to you?
She's just said there was this particular person, and I will come to it.
Okay.
After 2 years, when we looked everywhere and we couldn't find anything, we just assumed that it was just a dream and not real. And then we got 3 handbills in our letterbox. One was for a Tuesday night.
A handbill is advertising.
Advertising, yes, sorry. 3 different meetings. And one was for a Tuesday night meeting, one was for a Thursday night meeting, one was for a Sunday afternoon meeting. And we were going to go to the Tuesday. We couldn't, we got visitors. Wednesday, both Luba and Draga had to work back, we didn't. But Sunday we were free. We went to church, had a picnic lunch, and then went to the Barclay Theatre in Melbourne.
Okay.
And in here there was people, looked normal. Then we went and sat in the chairs, and Draga, always out of habit, she always sits between Luba and I. Wherever we are, she's the one in the middle. And she just kind of grabbed us. She said, this place looks familiar to me. There's something about this place. And I said, no kidding. We come here and watch Elvis Presley movies every week. What's your problem? No, she said, there is something else. And she looked at the stage and she said, this stage is so familiar. And then there was an announcement made or something, and we didn't talk. And then all of a sudden, the speaker came from our left on stage, and Draga just grabbed us, and even now I get goose pimples as I revisit the experience. She said, that's the man in my dream.
Is that so?
That's the man Jesus showed me. That's the stage. But there's just something not quite right. I said, well, can't be everything. Just be quiet and let's listen. We enjoyed Pastor Ray Stanley's mission.
Okay,
that was your dad. That was his first entrance. And that was the only time he was going to come from that side of the stage. After that, he would come from the other side. And Draga was told this in her dream. So this speaker's going to come from this side of the stage, and after this one night, he will be coming from the others.
That's amazing.
And that was a most interesting meeting. We loved it. So next Sunday we came, but we were running late. And so we were taken to the dress circle. And we sat in the front with the railing. And as we sat, Draga just froze.
Grabbed her hands
Grabbed
again.
our hands again, and Draga digs into you.
Does she? Okay,
and she said,
right.
take a look at this. This is the chip that I told you about, because she told us. Jesus pointed to this railing and said, this will be your other sign, Draga. Pay attention. The speaker is one side and this chip in this railing is your other sign. And these are my people. We went home that night and Draga had another dream. And Jesus said, so you have found it. These are my people and they will tell you about my truth. And we just thought this was so exciting. Draga woke us up again. She said, okay. I had this dream. Okay. This is what Jesus said to me. And next week, he will be talking about the relevance of the Bible. This was just an incidental message. True enough, the following Sunday, Pastor Stanley spoke about that. And in the 6 months, either Luba or Draga, on a Thursday night most times, because we went to the meeting Wednesday nights and Sunday nights, they would dream whenever there was a significant subject that was being presented. Like on the Sabbath, on the state of the dead, on the second coming. Now, Chester, we knew none of these things. We knew nothing about God's law.
That's amazing.
And one night when Jesus said, you girls need to know about my law, and opened Draga's little Bible beside her bed. When we woke up, she woke us up. The Bible was opened at Exodus 20. Now, we didn't open that Bible, Chester. That Bible was opened by God.
That's fantastic.
And we read it. We didn't know what the 10 Commandments were. You have to understand, we knew Orthodox, but we knew nothing about the God of the Bible. Absolutely. Yes. And Draga said, what does this mean, Cveta? I said, I know that in the Methodist Church they talked about the law of God and the 10 Commandments, and there was a film. So I relayed all this for 6 months. And when the Sabbath came, we had the dream on Thursday night. We kept Sabbath the following Saturday, and your dad presented on the Sunday. He came to visit us on the Tuesday, and he said, what do you think about my Sabbath? And we said, we have no problems, we kept it. And he said, well, you couldn't have kept it because I only presented on Sunday. We said, yeah, we know. But Jesus told us Thursday night that Sabbath was the day. And that's when your dad said, what? So we told him how we came to be at his meetings. Right through for the 6 months, it would have been at least half a dozen dreams that were presented. And the most significant was on the commandments and on the Sabbath. Draga saw part of it where it said about the commandments, and Luba saw the other part, like a postcard with a bud against each commandment. And Jesus said, when you understand this, your faith will flourish like this rose, and gave her a rose.
That's amazing.
We had no doubt that God was leading us. And a little while later, somebody asked me at Wahroonga Church and said, do you have a problem with Ellen White? It was a discussion in our class. And I said, no. And I know this minister said to me, oh, Cveta, come on, you can't be serious. And I said, yeah, I can. Because if he can talk to us, he can talk to another young lady.
Yes, it's just wonderful the way that God can step in sometimes and give specific direction like that.
Absolutely.
And so you were baptised?
We were baptised secretly, and we weren't prepared to tell Mum and Dad because we were going to be in trouble. Yeah,
and your mum, what was her reaction?
Mum, when we eventually told her, she exploded. So what am I going to do? What am I going to tell my ancestors? What am I going to tell my relatives? My daughters have gone mad and joined another church. Because in the Orthodox Church, it's a real damnation to change religion. And that's what she was fearing. My mum came 12 months almost to the day she was baptised in the Adventist Church.
Praise the Lord.
My dad, who didn't mind, took 25 years to give to his heart to the Lord.
That's an exciting story, Cveta, and I believe that story has been...
It was published in the Review and Herald about 11 years ago, back in 1997, I think.
The three sisters on the front cover.
Yes, that's right.
And Cveta, your life now, you're happy with that decision?
Absolutely. Chester, life has its problems, but it has a meaning. Yes. You really understand even problems. You really understand why you're here. And the most wonderful thing is when Mum went back in 75 and shared her faith with her relatives, they all adapted it so easy. They were overwhelmed. They wanted to hear more about the second coming. And she had a 90-year-old cousin who kept Sabbath in her way before she died. She lived for 2 years later, 2 years after that, and she insisted on keeping Sabbath because she believed it was God's truth.
Thank you very much, Cveta. It's been great to have you here and to hear this inspiring story of God's specific leading. I'm sure you've enjoyed this great story of God's leading, another story of amazing grace, and we look forward to being with you next time.